In 1957, Leonard Bernstein and Stephen Sondheim collaborated on a stunning new musical about love in the midst of cultural intolerance. And it was called West Side Story. Everybody wanted to see it, and everybody was sure it was going to be a shoo-in to win Best Musical at Tony time. West Side Story lost to a quaint little musical also about love called The Music Man. In The Music Man, the composer and lyricist Harold Wilson used humor combined with song to make plot exposition hilarious. The finest example of this is the cackling, chirping cacophony of pick a little, top little, pick a little, top little, pick, 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 top little, pick a little. This patter song features the town women, all upstanding members of the church, no doubt, telling newcomer Harold Hill all the dirt, especially about marrying Aru, the librarian, and the supposed scandal surrounding her. One reviewer went to see the show and later wrote, "As pillars of society, these God-fearing ladies relate all of the chit-chat and the hearsay, and they are exposed as the gossips that they are. They were never truly welcoming, only judgmental." This little book of James, which has a lot in common with the Wisdom of Solomon and the book of Proverbs, is the only wisdom literature to the church of the whole New Testament. James points out that the most potentially divisive persons in the church are the ones that others have divested or have invested with authority. That would be the preachers, the elders, the deacons, the organists, the choir directors. In other words, the teachers. Teachers of all kinds will be judged with greater strictness. But James also says, being human, we all make mistakes. Then he goes a step further. He says with a hint of a smile, the one who never makes a mistake in speaking is able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. James provides several metaphors. If we put little bits into the mouths of horses, their whole bodies will obey. Huge sea vessels can be controlled with a small rudder. And James throws in something for Southern Californians when he says, how great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. James says the tongue is a small member, but it seems to have a mind of its own. And as Mickey read to us, James says orange trees produce oranges and cherry trees produce cherries, but the tongue is the only life force in all of God's creation that can produce so many different kinds of fruit. With it we bless God, and with it we curse and send to hell the very ones made in God's likeness. Wow. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German World War II era theologian who was a pacifist. But during Hitler's time, Bonhoeffer was secretly teaching in an underground seminary, a seminary on the run they used to call it. And it was a lot like those illegal underground first century churches that James was trying to keep in right relationship with God. So teaching the book of James, Bonhoeffer had a rule about the tongue. And he said this, no matter what we're talking about and no matter who the subject is, no one was allowed to talk about another student in his absence. And if they did, they had to confess to the others that they did so. So even under the fear of the swastika, even under the fear of the Romans, there was to be no gossip and no slander. In the first century, James was writing when the chief form of communication was the word of mouth. Words no longer have to be spoken to cause an uproar. As you know, the executive branch of the United States government has worked itself into a frenzy looking for an anonymous author who has written a document that has started a huge firestorm. By taking to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, people can be tried and sentenced and thrown out of society in the court of public opinion. Whether she goes to jail or not, what will society think of a woman who represented herself as the wife of a firefighter and scammed thousands of dollars from sympathetic people? Check Facebook, check Twitter, check Instagram. What will society think of a couple who seemed to be holding on to money that they had collected for a homeless veteran who was trying to help them, but who now won't give the money up? Check Facebook, check Twitter, check Instagram. What does society think of a police officer who shot a man in his own apartment? But James was not talking about governmental politics or pop culture. James was writing about the business and the politics of being God's community, being welcoming church in a foreign, hostile land. James was talking about the way that the church, which 21 centuries later is on as shaky a ground as it was in the first century, nevertheless stopping to gossip and malign each other in such a way that a stain and an odor settles on and in the fabric of Christ's church, which people can see and sense from a distance without anybody telling them anything. Here's an example. Oh, didn't you think the choir sang so beautifully this morning? Didn't you? You might say to someone, oh, the choir sang so beautifully this morning. I've never heard anything quite so moving. And a critic might look at you and go, oh. With one word, the damage is done. We know that as Christ's body, we are called to look past our differences and support each other. Why then do we do so much damage with our tongues? Why in front of people and behind their backs do we say the things that we say? At the moment, it might seem like harmless fun, laughing at her, laughing at him. It's a way to connect with friends. I told the 5 o'clock service last night, I have a dear friend that I've known since I was a teenager. And she will call me up and she'll say, Bill, we're getting older now. And I go, yeah, we are. She says, you know, I can't remember all of my business anymore, but I ain't forgotten none of yours. Gossip. Sometimes talking about other people, it keeps us from working on our own issues, doesn't it? If we focus on others, we'll feel better about ourselves. Sometimes talking about other people gives a boost to our ego. It's a great way to deal with our anger. Did you see what she did to me? It's a great way to talk about change we don't like. A way to talk about the ones who are so different, who are so other. Why do the Irish and the Italian and the Armenians and all those LGBTIQ people have to flaunt themselves on floats and vans and have pride parades and have pride days out in the streets? Why are her skirts always so short? Why does he always wear the same shirt? Well, here's a question for you. Why have you spent your whole life in Christ's church and not learned to close your mouth long enough for your eyes to see through the eyes of those around you? Before you turn your tongue on them, look through their eyes. Oh, I wouldn't have done that, you might blurt out. Of course you wouldn't have done that. You're you. But you don't speak for the whole world. You don't even speak for the center of the world, or even the only right way. How often our tongues and our thoughtlessness have turned someone's financial woes, or fears about their family, or health concerns, or doubts about God into a conversation about us. I have a dear friend who, even before I finish the sentence, will go, oh, I know what you mean, I know what you mean, me too, me too. You might be telling somebody something, and in the middle of that say, oh, I remember when my husband was sick just like yours. He died, remember? And we didn't have any money either, just like you don't. Just like you, it made me doubt my belief in God. It's all about you. Dealing with our own fears and phobias without meaning to, are we driving people away from Christ's table? Those Music Man Tony voters may not have been ready to deal with love across culture and race, but they sure knew a lot about the dangers of gossip among good Christian folk. What if each of us covenanted that in a group conversation, we would not be the first ones to respond? What if we really just learned to listen better? The tongue by itself may indeed be small, but combined with its potential effects, the tongue is enormous. So maybe James, looking at our wagging tongues and their effects, could have been calling our small tongues our great big tongues, our great big mouths. James might say, like the small bit that controls the horse, like the small rudder that controls the vessel, our wills and our impulses and our opinions and our pride have to also become small so that God can control them. The hymn goes, breathe on me, breath of God, till I am wholly thine. It is only when we do the life-altering work of letting our wills and our impulses sink lowly into the will of God that we can finally see those who annoy us, those who vex us, those who frustrate us, those who make us so mad as children of God, just like we are, made in God's image, fighting and clawing and yearning and praying and begging to be accepted. Rather than making fun of them and bullying them and gossiping about them and confronting them, maybe then we could embrace them as fellow travelers on the same road that we travel. Now, nobody's perfect. There's nobody that I know who does not wish that she or he could not take back something that they have said. That person just doesn't exist. We are human. You and I have to get better at fully apologizing when we have been hostile and critical or when we have spoken out of turn. When I was in high school back at the end of the 17th century, I went to a high school where the only way for a black kid to be anybody was to be an outstanding athlete. I was 5'4", and I was a nerd. I didn't go to many games of any sport. I sang in the choir, I did the school ensembles, I accompanied whenever I could, and had an after-school job at the library. I was Mary in the library. One guy, the basketball center, seemed to always have it out for me. It seemed that he knew how to destroy me in front of other people all the time. There goes that, Bill, you're such a... And so when I got with my friends, I didn't have much good to say about him either. He's such a... He falls asleep in class. And no good. Never going to amount to anything. So many years later, and I think I've told you this story before, I was coming out of church near my house, and a huge old Cadillac comes to a screeching halt outside of the church, dust flying everywhere, all over the old neighborhood. And it was him. 20 years had passed, and I wasn't afraid, but the old adrenaline quick kicked in. All I remembered was the pain and how he had hurt me. And I was thinking, as he jumped out of the car, what does he want now? What is he going to say? What's going to go down now? He walked right up to me and he said, man, I am in AA now, and I need to apologize to you for every mean thing that I said to you and every mean thing that I did to you, to make you feel embarrassed or to make you feel bad about yourself. I was popular, but I was nervous. I couldn't handle it. How do I deflect all of that energy off of me? I know. You. I'll pick on you. I'll make you feel less than. I'll make you feel worse than I already feel. He said I was an ego-driven teenager looking for an easy target, and it was you. And I am sorry. He had done the hard, penitent work of realizing that his words hurt. His tongue was hurtful. He had surrendered himself to his higher power, God, and until the end of his life, he was trying to ask forgiveness for the pain that he had caused. I wish in that moment, when I was so amazed at what happened, that I had had the forethought and the power and the presence of mind to say, well, I need to apologize to you too, because I've run you down pretty badly too on my side. But God says that wherever we are, it's ultimately not about our egos or our pride. It's about surrendering ourselves to the will of God. Breathe on me, breath of God, until I am wholly thine. Breathe on me, breath of God, until all this earthly part of me glows with the fire divine. In your Son's name we pray.